Imagine this, for 30 days, no advanced chips leave Taiwan, no AI GPUs, no smartphone processors, no high-performance server silicon. Just 1 month, not a year, not a war, just a shipping halt. What would actually happen? Would the world collapse into a chaos? Would the factories stop? Would AI companies go dark? Would we simply adjust? Today we are not talking about hypotheoreticals driven by fear. We are talking about the supply chains, inventory cycles, and manufacturing dependencies, and real economic exposure. What really happens if Taiwan, the home to the world's most advanced semiconductor manufacturing, pauses export for just 30 days. Let's break it down. Welcome back to Chips Weekly by Diane. Taiwan is not just another manufacturing hub. It sits at the center of advanced manufacturing production. TSMC alone manufactures the overwhelming majority of the world's leading-edge logic chips, including 5nm, 4nm, and 3nm nodes, used by the companies like Apple, NVIDIA, AMD, and Qualcomm. For advanced AI accelerators and cutting-edge processors, these are very few alternatives at scale. Taiwan doesn't produce most of the world's chips by volume. Mature nodes are manufactured globally, but it dominates the frontier. And the frontier drives the digital economy. So what happens if that frontier pauses for 30 days? The first week would look almost normal. Why? Because supply chains buffer shocks. Most large semiconductor customers operate with weeks, sometimes months of inventory in distribution, logics, and warehouses. AI companies typically secure packaging and manufacturing capacity well in advance. Smartphone makers stage shipments ahead of product launches. Automotive suppliers keep rolling forecasts. Financial markets would react instantly, but physically, nothing would break in 1 week. However, behind the scenes, procurement teams would already be in emergency mode. Contracts would be reviewed, alternative capacity would be investigated, insurance clauses would be triggered, the clock would start ticking. By the second week, stress begins shifting upstream. Advanced packaging facilities that rely on Taiwan-fabricated wafers would start running into the input gaps. Companies depending on TSMC packaging for AI chip would see pipeline disruption. Large AI deployments scheduled for the quarter would begin slipping, not because demand changed, but because finished silicon could not exit the island. Stockpiled inventory would begin thinning. Some hyperscalers would delay cluster expansions. Cloud providers might quietly extend delivery timelines. Still no collapse, but the delay curve would steepen. Week 3 is where visibility increases. Smartphone production schedules would start adjusting, especially for devices dependent on leading-edge processors. Automotive manufacturers rely on specific advanced system-on-chips. For premium models would begin revisiting output forecasts. AI accelerator customers, especially those expanding data centers aggressively, would start feeling hard bottlenecks. The most exposed segment wouldn't be consumer electronics, it would be AI infrastructure, hyped with memory suppliers and packaging houses. Coordinated with Taiwan would feel the mismatch immediately. Investors would begin pricing an extended risk. Insurance premiums for the semiconductor logistics would spike. This is where the geopolitical anxiety becomes economical friction. At 30 days, the issue is no longer inventory. It becomes strategic confidence. Because the semiconductor supply chains are built on predictability. If Taiwan pauses shipments for 1 month, even without damage, even without war, company would begin accelerating diversification plans dramatically. Governments would intervene. The United States, Japan, and Europe would fast-track capacity ramp-ups in Arizona, Texas, Dresden, and Kumamoto. Capital would flood into the Samsung, Intel foundry, and secondary advanced node providers. Not because alternatives are immediately sufficient. They are not, but because trust would be shaken. And trust is the real currency of the semiconductor supply. Here's what would not happen. The global economy wouldn't shut down overnight. The internet wouldn't stop, banks wouldn't collapse. Most chips by volume include the automotive microcontrollers. Power management ICs and analog components are produced globally across mature nodes. The vulnerability lies specifically in advanced logic. AI accelerators, flagship smartphone system on chips, high-performance computing processors. The bleeding edge is concentrated. The bulk is diversified. And that distinction matters. Where this scenario becomes truly serious is AI. Modern AI infrastructure depends heavily on advanced node GPUs, fabricated in Taiwan, packaged through tightly coordinated supply chains. If shipments halted for 30 days during an expansion cycles, hyperscales would slow. Model training timelines would stretch. New deployments would be postponed. The AI race wouldn't stop, but it would lose its momentum. And in the competitive landscape, measured in quarters, not decades, that really matters. The physical disruption of 30 days is painful but survival. The psychological impact is greater. Markets would assume future instability. Governments would accelerate strategic decoupling. Capital decisions would change permanently. Even a temporary pause would validate every geopolitical fear priced into the semiconductor industry. And once strategic doubt enters the system, diversification becomes mandatory and not optional anymore. So could the world replace Taiwan so quickly? Advanced node semiconductor manufacturing is not easy to replace. Leading-edge fabs require years of construction, billions in equipment, highly specialized labor, deep process tuning. Even existing fabs outside Taiwan do not yet match the scale and ecosystem density of TSMC's operations. A 30-day pause is manageable. A prolonged disruption would be a structural shock. This thought experiment reveals something deeper. The semiconductor industry is not fragile because it lacks supply. It is fragile because it concentrates excellence. Efficiency drove consolidation. Now geopolitics challenges that efficiency. The next decade of semiconductor strategy will not be about maximum cost optimization. It will be about resilience. And resilience always costs more. So what happens if Taiwan stops shipping chips for 30 days? The world wouldn't collapse, but confidence cracks. AI slows, smartphone launches shifts, investors panic, governments accelerate industrial policy, and the semiconductor industry permanently reprices risk. Taiwan is not just a manufacturing hub, it's a pressure point in the global economy. And understanding that reality is the key to understanding the next decade of the technology. So let me ask you, would a 30-day pause change the balance of the global power or just accelerate the shifts that are already underway? Tell me what you think in the comments. And as usual, stay curious, stay sharp, and stay cheap aware.